Hi Ken and Mary, this is Anthony from 𝐿𝐵𝐾𝐓. Here's my dilemma. I've got £30,000 cash and I've got two options. The first option is to buy a £300,000 house and put the 30k as down as deposit.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Welcome back to our Money Dilemma series.
Yeah.
Today we have a fascinating dilemma, and this one is all about property investing.
Yeah, this series, as you guys know, is just casual. It's just, we're just chilling out, really, having a conversation. And it's our way of giving you guys a sneak peek into what we do over at Financial Joy Academy, a platform we created to help 10,000 people become financially independent this decade. At Financial Joy Academy, we have coaching calls every 2 weeks where we meet people who call our dream makers, almost essentially live on a call and have conversations. So this series essentially is giving you a bit of a sneak peek into that, into what we do and how we answer questions around investing, property investing, stock market investing, creating an online business, and so on. If you want to learn more about Financial Joy Academy, I'm going to link to it below and above for you to head over and check it out.
But for now, we have a dilemma on our hands, so let's check it out.
Hi Ken and Mary, this is Anthony from 𝐿𝐵𝐾𝐓. Here's my dilemma. I've got £30,000 cash and I've got two options. The first option is to buy a £300,000 house and put the 30k as down as deposit and live in the house. Currently, I'm renting for paying £850 per month. My second option is to put 25k deposit on a 50k mortgage for a 2-bedroom terrace up north. And then I'll use the remaining 5k for renovations. Then I'll remortgage the house, which will be worth around £65,000, which means I'll end up with an equity of around £40,000 from it. Then I can actually save up another £15,000 to buy a second property for cash, meaning after all that, I'll have two properties worth 130k, but owing £65,000 mortgage, but still renting in 𝐿𝐵𝐾𝐓. So I've done my calculations, and the rental income from the properties up north, the 2-bedroom terrace, will be around £400 a month. So that's my dilemma. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, this is a really interesting one.
Yeah, shout out to Anthony from 𝗪𝐿𝐵𝐾𝐓.
Shout out to Anthony. Well done, by the way, for saving 30k towards potentially buying a property. So that's big. That's big. So well done for that. You're in a good position, which is awesome. You're in a position where you can buy, and that's always where we want to be.
Yeah, so we wanted to know a bit more. We sent Anthony an email back, just kind of clarify a few things, and then I'm going to do a summary of the actual options that Anthony has got. And then we'd like to actually know from you guys, if you're loving the vibes of this particular new series and this video, please hit that like button just to kind of show some love, give some signals that you're enjoying it. But at the same time, we'd love for you to actually jump in the comments and let Anthony know what you think he should be doing. Now, of course, what we're doing with this series is not financial advice, I should mention. It's us actually putting ourselves in the shoes of our audience and essentially sharing with you guys what we would do in their shoes. Okay, so let's just read that extra email.
Okay, so Anthony said, "Hi Ken and Mary, thank you for getting back to me. The first property is a 2-bed terrace for 50k. I am thinking of putting down a deposit of 25k, meaning a 25k mortgage. I would use the remaining 5k to do it up, ready to rent out, and the rental income is £400 per month, which is the market value of similar properties is 65k to 70k.
Okay.
The second property is roughly the same as the first one. So I'm thinking with a mortgage debt of 25k on the first property, I remortgage it and I use the equity topped with some savings to purchase the second property for cash."
Okay, interesting.
Timescale should be around 6 to 12 months after buying the first property.
Okay, so thanks for that. If we just give a summary of what's really going on here. So in summary, Anthony has managed to save 30k and he's got two options. Should he put that money towards buying his own home that he's going to live in, the property is going to cost about 300k in Cambridgeshire. He'll put 30k deposit down, which is 10% deposit, right? Or should he try and do something more creative and a bit more imaginative in a way, and take a bit of a risk and put the money into buying a buy-to-let property, two buy-to-let properties, correct? To which he thinks he can do this. He thinks he'll put 25k deposit for one, a property that's costing 50k, so he's put 50% deposit down.
Yes.
He will then spend 5k doing the place up. Obviously, that'll take some time to happen. Okay, that's worth thinking about as well. And then he hopes to remortgage that property, adding some value to it. So the property will now be worth 65,000, which means he has a 40,000 pound equity, i.e. 65k, which is a new expected, we should say, value of the property after the renovation.
And valuation.
Yeah, take away the 25k he put in, okay? So that gives us the 40k he's mentioned as equity.
Yeah.
He now hopes to then take that 40k out. That's an interesting point. All the 40k out, and then add 15k savings to then buy another 65k property outright.
Cash.
For cash, okay? So that's where we then come into the picture to kind of just talk about it, just kind of lay the foundations.
Yeah.
So how should we go about doing this? Should we kind of like just maybe do some pros and cons? Okay, so let's look at option one, right? If we're going to talk about this. So option one essentially is where he's saying to himself, he is wanting to buy his own property. Okay, what are the pros of that? I'd say a pro is that he actually is a first-time buyer. We know this. In fact, I'll put up on the screen another screenshot that tells us that Anthony is a train driver earning 80k per year. Okay, we know this. So he's a first-time buyer, earns 80k a year, has a fairly decent job, paying really well, okay? So the pros for option one, which is that he buys his own property, are that essentially he's his first-time buyer privileges. He has access to kind of preferential, rates, potentially lower deposits on a property and things like that. The things that first-time buyers have as advantages.
Yeah, as you know, if you've seen some of our videos, there's quite a lot of government schemes that are available for first-time buyers, which it will be available to him.
Yeah, and on top of that, he stops dealing with landlords. I know he's renting, paying $850 at the moment in rent. And he stops having to deal with the hassle and the uncertainty that comes with actually renting a place, and instead. You've got, I guess the peace of mind that comes in many ways with actually owning your own home, because you've got your foot on the property ladder. Yeah,
and not to mention the freedom to do up your own home the way that you want to do it, with your own style, and just the flexibility to do that too.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that really speaks to that point as well when it comes to advantages is that essentially his mortgage he's going to be paying every month, if he chose option one, would be going straight towards boosting the equity in the home he owns, as well as obviously paying down the mortgage over time. Okay, and then finally, I'd say a pro is that the property will go up, likely go up in value, likely go up. Being in Cambridgeshire, the chances are the property value will go up over time as expected in that part of the world.
Exactly. We did a quick look online, and it does show, like you said, that area, is doing well in terms of house appreciation. The price of house is going up in value in that area. So it's actually a very good place to actually buy a property, even if it is a residential property, because who knows what will happen in the future. He may want to sell or maybe release the equity, some of the equity in his residential property. So it's definitely a good place to buy.
So what would you say are some cons then of option one, where he might say, well, actually he's trying to buy his own property? And then we're going to go on to pros and cons of option two, where he's now being a bit more creative potentially. What would you say are some cons?
So one of the cons is that where he currently is now, I know he's paying a rent of £850, whereas if he got a mortgage, obviously he's taken out a huge mortgage, which means higher monthly repayments. Okay, so speaking of which, let's actually check out how much we think he would actually be paying monthly in mortgage repayments using our mortgage calculator. So it'll be interesting to know. So we've got a laptop. Okay, so assuming that he is going to put 30k down on a 300k mortgage, that's 10% deposit. So if he got out a mortgage of 270,000, so 300k less the 30k, then we've worked out using our mortgage calculator, assuming that the annual interest rate will be around 2.9. This is just based on an assumption.
Just an assumption.
His monthly repayments will be around 1,278, which is quite a bit of an increase, compared to the £850 that he's currently paying.
It's a significant increase.
Exactly,
actually.
it's a significant increase. It's a significant increase, and it would obviously impact the amount that he would be able to save, for other future potential investments he might want to make after buying his residential property.
Yeah,
so that is something to factor in.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I was going to say, if anyone's interested in this spreadsheet, it's available for free. We're going to link to it below and above. It's our mortgage overpayment spreadsheet, which you can grab for yourself if you want it for free to kind of see the impact of any overpayments or that sort of stuff on your mortgage. But to your point though, we know he earns 80k, so what does that work out to be on a monthly basis? Should we just have a quick check?
Yeah, let's have a look. So if I bring up the salary calculator, again, we'll put a link for this salary calculator in the description.
Yep.
So we know he earns 80k and his take-home pay monthly will work out to be £4,590.77.
Okay, so for someone who earns that sort of money, which is a very good net income, assuming he's paying £1,278 thereabouts for a mortgage, that's not that bad, actually. Obviously it inhibits him a little bit from how much he's saving each month, but
exactly.
We don't know what his expenses are, sort of stuff.
Exactly. Like you said, we don't know what his other expenses are, so we don't know how much of an impact getting that higher mortgage would be, on his potential savings rate. Another con that I can think of is that obviously becoming a homeowner, you have your additional maintenance costs. So, ordinarily, if he's renting a property, if there's any works that need to be done in a property, he would call the landlord, and the landlord would then pay for those, service and maintenance. Whereas now he's going to have to foot the bill of that.
Yeah.
So again, which further reduces, his potential savings rate.
Yeah, his disposable income will be lower as well as a result of that. Yeah. But he becomes a homeowner, which is like everybody wants.
These cons.
We say everybody wants to become a homeowner, but not really everybody does. But most people want to become homeowners.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's now look at option 2. This is him now saying, well, actually, maybe I should do something else. Okay, and let's look at the pros and cons. You want to speak to what are some of the pros of option 2, where he is now saying he wants to buy a buy-to-let property, do some more work, remortgage, and then buy another one outright. Are there any pros to doing that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, can I just say I love the bold kind of plan with this, because, we're all about taking calculated risks. And so I'm loving the boldness with this. So one of the pros is that obviously he earns a decent salary. However, with this option of buying potentially 2 buy-to-let properties, he's diversifying his income.
True.
He's not just relying on one source of income, which is his 9 to 5. He has another stream of income, so which is again something that we always promote in the Humble Penny and Financial Joy Academy. So that's one pro. And
that's semi-passive in a way. I know it's property, and obviously with property you have to get involved with maintenance, but it is semi-passive in a way, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the cons, because, as much as I love the boldness, this is based on quite a lot of assumptions.
Yes.
So, let's just talk about it and let's just unpack what we think the cons are.
Yeah, I think one con definitely is that, obviously him buying, he hasn't got a home at the moment.
No.
But him going to buy a buy-to-let property for investment purposes without, on the face of it, will obviously affect the affordability when it comes to him actually owning his own property, because he will now potentially have 1 or 2 mortgages, depending on if he's able to buy the second buy-to-let outright in cash or not, which, by the way, we're going to get to that in a minute. But essentially his affordability will be affected when it comes to him actually buying his own property.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I guess a second con, and this one is one that many people might not think about, is around stamp duty, right? Because if you own imagine he actually bought his own property, if he went and bought a second property, he'd have to pay extra stamp duty of 3% on the purchase price of that second property, thereabouts, But that 3% on a much lower property price is a better place to be compared to paying 3% on a much higher price property, for example, off his own home. So if he did it the other way around, where he actually had a buy to let and then went ahead and bought, you had to pay a much higher stamp duty
on the second
on the home. Let's assuming he eventually buys a home, he'll have to pay a much higher stamp duty.
Yeah.
Whereas if he did it the other way around, it will work out to be a lot cheaper from a stamp duty perspective, because he would pay a much lower stamp duty on a property price that's much lower compared to if he actually owned the home.
Yeah, true. Good point.
But one point that really jumped out though, thinking about this, you know how he said he would love to actually own a second buy-to-let outright, and he was thinking about taking all the equity out, pretty much the 40k out of the property. That's what he assumes he could do. Save up 15k, add the two, that's 55k. So he could then buy another 50 odd k property thereabouts, which is what he would have bought the first one. Okay, but having to think about that, I'm not quite sure he could do that because of the rules around kind of remortgaging buy-to-let properties. Because,
tell us about the rules.
Yeah, because you're typically allowed to borrow up to 75% of the value of the property. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my iPad real quick and just...
That changes things, doesn't it?
Yeah, that definitely does change things. So just grab my iPad and just give you guys an illustration of what I mean. So let's say, I mean, just writing here on my iPad, I'll put this up on the screen for you guys to see. Let's say he's got, in the before scenario, he's got a property price of £50,000, which is the actual price of property. He then takes out a mortgage of 25k, okay, which implies a deposit of 25k, okay? So we know that already, right? But I want to make it really clear for us to see. And then afterwards, after he's done up the place and gone on to revalue the property and things like that, the new value of the property is £65,000, okay? That's value. We know, according to the rules, you can borrow a maximum of around 75%. So 75% of that 65,000 value is 48.75k in mortgage, total borrowing, which would imply he's now got equity in the property of 16.25 thousand equity. Okay. Now, although it looks like he's borrowing 48.75k, which he is, okay, which he's assuming he could take all out. Let's not forget he was already borrowing 25k, okay? So what will really hit his bank is 23.75 thousand.
Yeah, which is 48,000, basically.
48.75
minus 25k.
Yeah.
In the mortgage.
Yeah.
So it's quite significantly less than what he actually thought it would be.
Yeah.
Which obviously impacts what he can buy.
Exactly.
In terms of, what property he can buy.
And then he mentioned he'd say 15k. So if you add 15k to that, you'd have 38.75 thousand, which is a good amount of money, but it will not buy you a property outright up north, even at a 50k property. So, Anthony, as much as I think this is a really quite an interesting plan, something to explore, I think the second leg of your plan faces a challenge, because you end up potentially buying another buy-to-let property with a mortgage on it rather than buying it outright. Unless, of course, you then spend, a few more months or potentially years, however long it takes, actually saving a bit more money to be able to do that, if you wanted to do that, okay? And even if that was the case, I wouldn't really see why you might want to do that. Why would you want to do that when, you could actually potentially borrow the money from the bank and use, because it's a buy-to-let mortgage, use an interest-only mortgage, potentially, provided the math stacks up, you could then make the purchase that way.
So how about the fact that we know he earns 80k, that makes him a higher rate taxpayer. What are the implications for that then? Yeah,
okay, so that's actually a really good point. So tax is a massive implication when it comes to buy-to-let properties. Yes. So if you went down this second route, not only will you have to think about, obviously, the cons I've mentioned previously, but you now have to think about tax implications of actually owning that property. And there's a thing around the deductibility of interest when it comes to buy-to-let properties, which makes it not quite as good from a returns perspective as it used to be before. It's still fairly okay for basic rate taxpayers, but for higher rate taxpayers, it's a bit more of an issue, which is why a lot of people who now explore buy-to-let properties, if they're higher rate taxpayers, might want to consider buying their buy-to-let properties in a limited company. And then you have to go through the process of actually trying to withdraw those profits from that company by paying yourself some dividends. So that's something else definitely for you to consider. There's so many things that could actually go wrong. You could go and remortgage and not get your 65k valuation from the bank. That could go wrong for sure. You could get a much lower valuation, which means you'd be able to take out far less from that property. And also the point around you working. I know you've got a job now as a train driver that's paying you really well, but really and truly, nothing really guarantees that that job will still be around or that nothing else could happen in between you buying that first property and potentially trying to buy the second, and then potentially one day trying to buy your own property as well.
Yes, that was another point that we missed as well. You know, the best time to buy a residential property is when you actually have a full-time job. Yeah. Because trying to get a residential property when you're not working, you know, brings its own challenges, obviously, trying to get on a property ladder. So that's another thing. Whilst he still has a secure job, he may want to consider buying his own residential property. 100%.
In conclusion, I mean, what we would do in your shoes is definitely try to buy a home as soon as you can, a home you can live in. Now, we know this would not apply to everybody, but we're looking at this particular example specifically, because there might be circumstances where you might want to do it the other way around. But another reason why we're going with this conclusion is we had an email from someone recently who has at the moment has 4 buy-to-lets, I believe. Yeah. And she's in her early 50s and she does not own her own property. Okay. And the reason she reached out to us was because she's starting to feel a fair bit of insecurity around not having her own home. And then tied to those insecurities are the challenges around trying to save for a deposit to buy her own home, tied also to issues around now feeling like you're running out of time. Okay, so we don't know your age, Anthony, or whoever else this situation might appeal to, but in our experience, it's always best, as Mary mentioned earlier, to buy a residential property as early as you can whilst you are still working.
Yeah. To add to the point that Ken mentioned about stamp duty, Anthony, if you bought your residential property first, then you don't pay the higher stamp duty on the expensive property. Instead, you pay the stamp duty on the property which has a lower mortgage.
Then once you've got the security of actually owning your own home, you can then go ahead and, of course, make more buy-to-let investments. Now, typically, properties that are below £125,000 thereabouts do not have to pay any stamp duty at all. You know, so if you bought that after owning your own home, you wouldn't typically have to pay stamp duty, but because it's a second home, there's that extra 3% penalty that you have to pay. But of course, that penalty, as Mary mentioned earlier, is actually a lot smaller because it's based on a property that's a lot cheaper. Okay? Guys, if you really enjoyed this dilemma, we'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. Let us know what aspects of this dilemma really stood out for you. And actually put yourself in Anthony's shoes and let us know what you would do if you were in his shoes. Would you go ahead and buy your home first? Or would you go ahead and take some risks and try to buy some investment properties first before you buy your own home? Jump in the comments and let us know. We're also going to put the details in the comments for this dilemma series. If you wanted to sign up, if you want us to actually respond to your dilemma, please look in the resource section below for the instructions to head over and send us your dilemma.
We look forward to reading your comments, guys, and like Ken said, if you like this video, do share it with somebody else who you think would benefit from watching this. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and as ever, in all things,
be thankful and seek joy.
Take care.
Take care, people. Bye.